Chapter 16 of Drona Parva. Arjuna's horses are tired. The sun was slowly but steadily wheeling his way towards the west. Arjuna was now fighting against time. He was fighting with double the vigor he had shown at the beginning of the day. Wherever his chariot went, destruction followed in its wake. The skill of Krishna in guiding the horses was a pleasure to see. No one else's chariot could move as fast as that of Arjuna. It roared through the ranks. But the horses of Arjuna began to look tired. They had been yoked to the chariot in the morning. They pulled the chariot with difficulty. They were thirsty and very tired. They had been wounded too by the many arrows which had been shot at them. Since they were divine, these horses could not be killed. But they were tired. Still they passed through the ranks valiantly. It could be seen that the chariot of Arjuna had lost speed. Seeing it, the Kauravas were happy. The spot where Jayadratha was stationed was still far away. The sun had begun to slope slightly towards the west. The horses of Arjuna were tired and they could not go fast. Seeing this, the brothers Vinda and Anuvinda of Avanti came and challenged Arjuna. They harassed him, Krishna and the horses too. Arjuna cut off their bows with 2 arrows. They took up other bows and continued to fight. On other days, perhaps Arjuna would have kept up the fight. But today, he was hard pressed for time. He could not afford to waste time in fighting duels. He cut the head of Vinda with a sharp arrow. Anuvinda tried to avenge the death of his brother. He too was killed by the next few arrows. The angry host of the Kauravas fell on Arjuna. He was undaunted. In the midst of the fighting, Arjuna spoke to Krishna. Krishna, Jayadratha is still far away. My horses are fatigued. They have been hurt too much. They are not able to go fast. They must be rested. You must decide on what is to be done. Tell me what we should do now. Krishna said, I have also been feeling the same thing. We must release them from the chariot for a while until they are refreshed. How shall we set about it? Arjuna said, I will fight on foot. You do the needful. Krishna agreed to it. Arjuna descended from the chariot. There was nothing flurried or hurried in his movements. The smile was on his face as though everything was normal. He stood with his Gandiva in his hand. He looked beautiful as he stood there, like Kama, the god of love, with his bow made of sugar cane. The Kauravas thought that this was the time to harass him. He had no chariot. He was standing on the ground, an easy target for all of them. So thought the Kauravas. They all surrounded him even as they did Abhimanyu the previous day. They had a surprise in store for them. Arjuna fighting on the ground was more terrible than Arjuna in the chariot. The army was absolutely helpless against the prowess of Arjuna. In the midst of all this, Krishna came to Arjuna and said, Arjuna, there is no water here. Without satisfying their thirst, how can I yoke the horses to the chariot? Krishna's words were heard by everyone there. Arjuna, with a smile, said, but there is water. Look. Arjuna took up his bow and arrow and invoking Varuna, he shot an arrow into the ground. There then came into view a beautiful lake full of sweet, clear water. The lake was bound on all sides by the arrows of Arjuna. He had built a pavilion with myriads of arrows. The army was amazed at the feat. Krishna was extremely pleased with this display of prowess by Arjuna. Well done, said Krishna, and went to his horses to bring them to the lake. He released the grateful animals from the chariot. His eyes were wet when he looked at the dear animals. Very gently, he pulled out the many arrows which had been lodged in their bodies. The entire army was watching the performance with wonder and admiration. Krishna was fighting on foot all the time. He was very cool. Arjuna was fighting on foot all the time. He was very cool. The Kauravas were all admiration for Arjuna and Krishna. They said, "What a miracle! In the midst of the field has been created a lake. With a single arrow, Arjuna has been able to do this. The water birds have begun to collect in the sky at the sight of the lake." No one was interested in fighting. They were all watching Krishna as he tended the horses. The smile on the face of Krishna was bewitching. He looked as though he were in the midst of his gopis in Gokula and not in the midst of warriors who were bent on killing Arjuna. His calmness upset the morale of the Kauravas. Without showing any flurry, Krishna stroked and massaged the horses. Even as the Kauravas were looking on, he spoke to the horses gently and made them relax. They were rested for a while. Krishna was skilled in the art of handling horses, and his loving touch was enough to cure them of all fatigue. He made them drink water to their heart's content. Coolly he yoked them again to the chariot. They looked as fresh as newly opened flowers. Krishna brought the chariot to Arjuna and stood it in front of him. Quite some time was spent in this incident, but it was essential for the horses. It also helped to impress on the enemies the fact that Krishna and Arjuna were not worried about the waning of daylight. It looked as though they did not care about the passage of time. They were so sure of their winning. This had a great effect on the army. Arjuna ascended the chariot. They hurried to the spot where Jayadratha was stationed. Their speed was greater than that of wind. Killing the army on either side, they proceeded like a forest conflagration which spreads, aided by the wind. They reached the end of the Vyuha, the formidable Padma Vyuha of Drona. They were to enter the last Vyuha. The Kauravas thought that Arjuna would not be able to cross the several Vyuhas, but these two had managed to do the impossible. The sons of Dhritarashtra were desperate. They all surrounded these two. The progress of the chariot was also impeded. Arjuna just smiled at Krishna. They did not care for the obstruction. They passed them all by. Arjuna had passed Durmarshana and Drona the terrible. He had passed Kritavarma and he had destroyed all the kings who had dared to cross him. He had now almost reached the end of the journey. It looked certain that Jayadratha would be killed. Krishna and Arjuna could now see him. He was terrified and they were jubilant. Looking at these two proceeding at such a fast rate, Duryodhana came in front of them with a desire to protect Jayadratha. He had the armor of Drona to protect him. He stood in front of the chariot of Arjuna. Krishna said, "Arjuna, the lord of the Kauravas, Duryodhana himself has come and wants to fight a duel with you. You must be careful. He is a powerful opponent. His arrows can travel a long distance. He is hard to fight. He will justify his name. Duryodhana is a great fighter on the chariot. He has been brought up in the lap of luxury. He is very proud and highly sensitive. He is a great hater of the 5 Pandavas. He is now very angry. He is desperate too. A desperate man will fight 10 times as well as he does ordinarily. Duryodhana is the root cause of all the many sufferings of the Pandavas. I cannot understand his asking for a duel with you after seeing you in action. Arjuna, see that he loses his arrogance. Drunk with power, he has never known what suffering is. He has never met you so far in a duel. Let him see what it is to oppose the great Arjuna in a duel." Arjuna said, "I am pleased too to see that this man who has been the cause of all the many sufferings of Yudhishthira. I must avenge those wrongs." The two were very excited at the thought of fighting with Duryodhana. They were surprised to see that he was just as eager to fight. He was also just as excited. The entire army of the Kauravas was so pleased to see their king take up their cause and fight with Arjuna. Duryodhana was smiling all the while. He spoke to Arjuna. Come, Arjuna, I have been hearing so much about the many astras you have at your command. Let me see some of them. Try and fight with me now. Duryodhana began the attack. He sent several sharp arrows which had the power of piercing even steel. They were so strong. He hurt both Krishna and Arjuna. Before Arjuna could return them, several more were sent by Duryodhana. Krishna said, I have never felt so much pain before. These arrows of Duryodhana are terrible. Arjuna was very angry with Duryodhana. He sent several arrows which were like snakes. They literally hissed out of his bow, but they were powerless against Duryodhana. All the arrows of Arjuna were powerless. They could not hurt Duryodhana. Krishna said, Arjuna, I am being harassed by this man. You are also hurt by him. Your arrows do not seem to have any effect on him. It looks as though he is the better fighter. Your hand has lost its skills, or perhaps your Gandiva has lost its power of old. Evidently, fate is against us. The sun is fast proceeding towards the west. You are being defeated by Duryodhana of all people. Jayadratha is indeed fortunate since he has a good champion to fight for him. We may as well go back and admit defeat. Duryodhana is too good for you. Arjuna said, knowing everything, why do you taunt me, Krishna? You know as well as I do that this coward is not capable of standing in front of me unless he is sure of baffling me. Our great Acharya has placed on him the armor which can defy all my arrows. It is a great armor. Of course, no one can hurt the man who is wearing it. Only my Guru and know it. With the help of this borrowed armor, Duryodhana has the courage to defy me. You know it well. Look now, I know the astra which can break this armor. Indra, my father, has taught me that. Arjuna fixed an arrow to his bow and invoked the Manavastra. The arrow was just about to leave his bow. Ashwathama from a distance broke that arrow into two. Arjuna knew that the Acharya's son had guessed his intentions and baffled him in his attempt. The astra could not be used again. If it were, it would kill him who invoked it. He said, the son of my Guru has baffled me. Still, watch me harass Duryodhana. He knows nothing about this armor. He is wearing it as a woman would the armor which a man should. He is not at home in it. He is like a bullock who is carrying a precious load without knowing its worth. Arjuna sent a shaft and then another and then still another and attacked just the spots on the body of Duryodhana which had not been covered by the armor. The fingers of Duryodhana did not have the guards at the tips, since it is necessary to leave the fingertips naked for shooting with precision. The palms were naked too. Through the nails, through the palms, racked with torture, Duryodhana fled from the field. Laughing with amusement, Krishna and Arjuna proceeded very fast towards Jayadratha. The sun was nearing the west at a dangerously fast rate. Time was indeed very precious. They had to count the moments. The chariot was fleeing towards the Suchi Mukha Vyuha. They wanted to reach the presence of Jayadratha in a few moments. Krishna was in a fix. A whole crowd of chariots and warriors surrounded their chariots on all sides. They were still 2 miles from the spot where Jayadratha was stationed. Krishna said, Arjuna, I want some cheering up. Draw the string of the Gandiva and the twang it as loudly as you can. I will also blow my Panchajanya. That will make these men afraid, and it will exhilarate me. There arose the twang of the bow called Gandiva. Drowning that noise rose the sound of the great Panchajanya. Krishna's face was covered with dust. His face was looking very tired. The sound of the Panchajanya seemed to split the sky with its blasts. The protectors of Jayadratha saw that Arjuna had advanced too near to their liking. There was a terrible assault by the Kaurava heroes. Bhurishravas, Sala, Radheya, Vrishasena, Kripa, Shalya, and Ashwatthama together attacked Arjuna. 8 of them fought against 1. They had their army too with them. The fight was terrible. They all blew their conches and attacked Arjuna. Ashwatthama's arrows were returned to him tenfold. Radheya was harassing Arjuna along with Vrishasena and Shalya. Never had Arjuna fought so well as he did then. They were each one of them wounded by the arrows of Arjuna. The fight went on for a long time. The sun was imperceptibly sailing towards the western hill. Krishna and Arjuna were very much worried, but they would not show it. Arjuna fought desperately, and the opposite side was equally desperate. Shri Krishna Arpanamast. Chapter 17 of Drona Parva, Yudhishthira's Fears. In the meantime, the fight with Drona was going on in the Pandava army. A duel was fought between Yudhishthira and Drona. It was a wonderful sight. Yudhishthira was excelling himself. He wounded Drona severely. He covered him with his numerous arrows, and once he threw a Shakti which was terrible like the thunderbolt of Indra. The onlookers thought that Drona was sure to be killed by it. Drona had to use the Brahmastra to stop the Shakti. He went towards the chariot of Yudhishthira. When he was quite near, Drona threw a mace at Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira threw one of his, and the 2 maces clashed against each other and fell on the ground. There were sparks of fire which had been caused by the terrific impact. Drona broke the banner of Yudhishthira. He killed his horses. He tried to break the chariot. Yudhishthira had to jump down from the chariot to save himself. Drona saw him on the ground without a chariot, without anyone by his side. He made him faint by sending an astra which made all the army faint in a moment. Drona rushed towards Yudhishthira like a lion towards a lamb which is unprotected. There was great tumult in the army. They were all sure that Drona had captured Yudhishthira. Satyaki came there just in time. Yudhishthira leaped into his chariot, and Satyaki bore him away from there. Drona was baffled again in his attempt to capture Yudhishthira. This was the 3rd time this has happened. On the first day he had nearly succeeded and Arjuna came in time. On the second day too, Yudhishthira had been almost caught, but he had run away from the field and a later attempt could not be made because of the appearance of Arjuna. Today, Satyaki, the student of Arjuna, had saved Yudhishthira from his hands. It looked as though all his attempts were doomed to be failures. Drona was very disappointed and very angry. He was sorry he could not please Duryodhana. The fight became general once again. One of the Kekeya brothers, Brihat-Kshatriya by name, was hurt by one of the warriors on the side of the Kauravas. His name was Kshemadurti. They fought for a long time and Kshemadurti was killed by Brihat-Kshatriya. Viradhanva, a Trigarta, was causing great harm to the army of the Pandavas. After destroying a portion of the army, he came and accosted Drishtaketu, the king of Chedis, who was a great asset to the Pandavas. He fought a terrible duel with Viradhanva and finally killed him with a powerful javelin. Satyaki, Nakula and Sahadeva were in the front. No one could fight with them without running away or being killed. Again there was a duel between Drona and Satyaki. The sons of Draupadi were in excellent form. The king's Shala could not stand the onslaught of these 5 young men. They fought for a long time. In the end, the son of Sahadeva killed Sala. Bhima fought a duel with Alambusa and defeated him. Alambusa and Gatotkaja fought a very good duel. Each revelled in outwitting the other with his illusory fight. Alambusa began to harass all the warriors on the side of the Pandavas. Gatotkaja fought with him for a long time. When he saw Alambusa harassing the army, he thought it was time he was killed. The duel had assumed a dreadful aspect. It was a gruesome sight. They had given up their Maya fighting now. They were engaged in a wrestling bout. It reminded Yudhishthira of the fight between Bhima had with Himba years back. It was amazing how much Ghatotkacha resembled Bhima. Everyone was watching the duel with great excitement. Finally, Ghatotkacha descended on Alambusa like a hawk. He lifted up Alambusa and dropped him on the ground. His body was shattered to fragments. The great Alambusa, the friend of Baka, had joined the army of Duryodhana to avenge the death of his friend by killing Bhima. He was killed by the son of Bhima. There was a deafening shout from the Pandava host when this feat was performed by Ghatotkacha. The Kauravas were shocked to see the dead form of one of their most powerful fighters. Yudhishthira embraced Ghatotkacha. Bhima was immensely pleased with the valor of his son. It was then that they heard the sound of Krishna's Panchajanya. Krishna had blown the Panchajanya so loudly that the twang of the Gandiva was drowned. Krishna had done it deliberately. He saw that the army which surrounded their chariot could not be destroyed within the time limit they had imposed on themselves. He wanted someone to tackle the army. Hence this maneuver on his part, without letting Arjuna know about it. His purpose was achieved. Yudhishthira heard the sound of the Panchajanya without hearing the twang of the Gandiva. He became extremely worried about the welfare of Arjuna. He then heard the noise made by the conches of the Kaurava heroes. He was sure that something terrible had happened to Arjuna and that the blowing of the Panchajanya was a cry for help. Yudhishthira rushed to Satyaki and spoke to him about his fears. He said, "You must now help us, Satyaki. You are interested in the welfare of the Pandavas. You are dear to Arjuna and he loves you as his brother. As for you, you worship Arjuna. I know that. You are just as famous and as great as Arjuna and Krishna. You must now proceed to the spot where Arjuna is being harassed and help him. I can think of no one else who can be of help to Arjuna in this emergency which seems to have arisen." Once in the Dvaitavana, we were discussing the future and the war which would have to be fought. Arjuna said, "Satyaki has a light touch. He is a very graceful archer. He is highly intelligent. He will never lose his head in an emergency. He is my disciple. Satyaki is very dear to me and I am very dear to him. For my sake he will do anything. He will set his life at stake and fight for me. Of all the heroes of the Vrishni house, barring Krishna, I will prefer Satyaki to Balarama, Aniruddha, even Pradyumna, or Gada, who is my friend, or Sharna, the brother of Shubhadra, or Samba. I think very highly of Satyaki. I will take him on our side. He is enough to win this war." So spoke your guru and friend. As for me, Satyaki, I do not find any difference between you and my beloved brother Bhima. You must go immediately to the assistance of Arjuna. Do not worry about me. Bhima is here to take care of me. Look how Bhima and Drishtadyumna are melting the army of Drona. I am worried so much about Arjuna. I do not know if he is alive or dead. I think of the danger assailing him and my mind is upset. I am thinking only of that dark, handsome brother of mine. The dark, curly-haired Arjuna is in trouble. Ever since the day dawned, he has been fighting alone. He entered the immense army all by himself. Because of this worry, I cannot concentrate on fighting. I know that he is protected by Krishna, the Lord of the universe. He can kill everyone. I know that, but still the mind misgives me. I am terrified that his energy is failing him. The sun had begun to glow in the west. Please go at once to the help of Arjuna. Satyaki spoke words of comfort to Arjuna. He said, "All that you say is true. I am more fond of Arjuna than I am of my life. You are fond of me as you are of Nakula, Sahadeva, Bhima or Arjuna. But I must not go now. Arjuna is able to tackle the army of the Kauravas. I am not worried about that at all. I am worried only about you. Drona is terrible. Just before he left for the front, Arjuna entrusted me with the task of guarding you. You know the promise of Drona. He will try his best to capture you. Just a while ago he had done it almost. I must stay by your side like a mother by her child. If something happens to you after my departure, I will never forgive myself, and Arjuna will never speak to me after that. Barring Pradyumna, there is no one equal to me in the art of fighting with all the divine astras which Drona has at his command. Please do not worry about Arjuna, my lord. He is safe. The moment I leave you alone, Drona will sweep down on you like a hawk, and I dare not think of what may happen. There is no one to protect the wheels of your chariot. Bhima, Drishtadyumna, and I are protecting you. If I go away, the task will be too heavy for the other two. I do not want to go. Yudhishthira said, all that you say is true, but my mind is thinking of only Arjuna. I will be very carefully guarded by the other two. I am not afraid. I have Bhima, Drishtadyumna, the sons of Draupadi, the Kekeya brothers, Gatotkaja, Virata, Draupada, Drupada, Shikhandi, Nakula, Sahadeva, Drishtaketu, Kuntiboja, and all the army. Do not have any worry. You must go. Satyaki was in a real fix. He had to agree to the suggestion of Yudhishthira. He did not want to leave him and go, but then he was afraid that people would call him a coward if he did not go to the assistance of Arjuna. His voice was choked with tears. He said, my lord, I hate to leave you and go, but I will go. May the Lord protect you. Now that I have decided on joining Arjuna, my heart is singing. I will be so happy helping the greatest man that ever was born on this earth. I love Arjuna as if I have not loved even my father. He means so much to me. I am happy to go and join him. I stayed on here since he had asked me to. But now you, my dear elder brother, have commanded me to go. I will certainly obey you. Krishna is prepared to lay down his life for the Pandavas, and Satyaki is just as eager to do the same. I will now proceed towards Suchimukha Vyuha of Drona and kill all those who are in the way of Arjuna. I know that Jayadratha is buried in the heart of that immense army which is roaring like the ocean at the sight of the full moon. I will just wait till my horses are refreshed and yoked to my chariot. I have a long way to go, and the horses cannot afford to get tired. Satyaki equipped his chariot for the fight ahead of him, even as Arjuna did in the morning. Satyaki had had a hard day till then, fighting more than one duel with Drona. Once he had to rescue Drishtadyumna, and once he was just in time to prevent the capture of Yudhishthira. Both the times Drona fought frivolously with Satyaki. They had fought after that too, but Satyaki did not mind the fatigue to the body. His mind was exhilarated at the thought of the great feat he would have to perform today in order to reach Arjuna and his troubles. Arjuna had gone so far away from him. There were two vyuhas to cross before he could reach Arjuna. The first was comparatively easy. Arjuna had almost destroyed it, but the second was being guarded by Drona. But Satyaki was sure of his own prowess. He would be able to do it. His horses had been refreshed and rested. They were yoked to the chariot. His charioteer was the brother of Daruka. Satyaki's banner was the lion. He now looked beautiful. He had just refreshed himself with a bath, and he was wearing a garland of lovely flowers. He had drunk wild honey to give him new energy. He ascended the chariot after saluting Yudhishthira and taking the dust off his feet. He looked just like Krishna with his beautiful smile and well-clad figure. Yudhishthira sent Bhima with him so that he could accompany him for some distance. The chariot of Satyaki began its journey. After going some distance, Satyaki stopped his chariot and spoke to Bhima. I am going to Arjuna's help because Yudhishthira is worried about him. Arjuna had placed the burden of Yudhishthira's safety on my shoulders, and now I place it on yours. I know that you are capable of guarding Yudhishthira. Hence, I am without worry. Bhima, be very careful about the attack of Drona. Now that I am going, he will hurry to your presence and try to snatch Yudhishthira under your very eyes. Bhima said, yes, I know it. It is a difficult task, but rest assured, Drishtadyumna and I will be able to guard our brother. Go now, Satyaki, it is getting late. The two friends embraced each other and parted. Bhima stood watching the chariot of Satyaki as it bore him away. Drishtadyumna had already stationed himself by the side of Yudhishthira. He said, Satyaki will return with glory. The omens are all favorable to us. Let us prepare ourselves for the attack of the furious Brahmin who is waiting for his death at my hands. Sri Krishna Pranamastha. Chapter 18 of Drona Parva, the prowess of Satyaki. Satyaki followed the path which Arjuna had taken in the morning. The army attacked him furiously. They knew that he was not an easy person to defeat. They were bent on preventing him from entering the Vyuha. But he killed everyone with great speed. Drona saw the devastation caused in the army by Satyaki. He hurried to his presence and challenged him. Satyaki was stopped when he came to the commander of the Kaurava army. They fought for a while. The fight had no chance of ending. The two were furious with each other. They rained arrows and javelins, and it looked as though the fight would never end. Drona was smiling to himself all the while. He knew the object of Satyaki and he would not let him pass through to the presence of Arjuna. With a taunting smile, Drona said, "Your beloved Guru, Arjuna, played the cowherd when I met him. He would not fight with me. Admitting his defeat, he made a pradakshina to me with his chariot and went away. Your Guru is such a cowherd. I will not let you pass me without your killing me or without anyone killing you." Satyaki was amused by the easy way in which Arjuna had got the better of Drona. He said, "There is no greater glory for a student than to follow in the footsteps of his Guru. I am only too proud to play the cowherd if my Guru did it." So saying, Satyaki turned the chariot, making a pradakshina round Drona, and hurried away from his presence. Drona was furious. He followed Satyaki as fast as he was able to. Satyaki told his charioteer, "Go quickly, Drona will follow me. I must reach Arjuna as early as possible. Just ahead of me is the army of Bahlika. Beyond that is the army of the king of the south. By the side of the army of Bahlika is stationed the big formidable army of Radeya. Take me quickly there. Go towards the left side of the army. We will miss the army of Bahlika and meet the army of the south and that of Radeya." Satyaki, followed by Drona, was busy attacking the army of the south. He went to destroy also the army of Radeya. Satyaki was like Arjuna himself. People saw the same quickness of hand, the same coolness, the same smile, the same unruffled way of fighting. It was a great pleasure to watch him proceed. Slaying the army ruthlessly, Kritavarma came and stood in front of the chariot of Satyaki. Satyaki did not care who came in front of him. He fought gloriously with Kritavarma. He was hurt terribly by the arrows of Kritavarma. His body was covered with blood. Satyaki was very angry with his cousin and for attacking him. He hurt Kritavarma with his keen arrows. He harassed him. He covered him with his many arrows. Satyaki then took up a javelin and hurt the charioteer of Kritavarma. The charioteer was killed and he fell out of the chariot. The horses tried to bolt, but Kritavarma took the reins in his left hand and fought with his right. But before he could compose himself and resume his attack, Satyaki had gone quite some distance. Kritavarma attacked the Pandava army, which had Bhima and others in the front. His anger against Satyaki was still fresh in his mind. His fighting was therefore more than good. It was impossible for the Pandava host to bear his onslaught. The army was scattered by him. Bhima, Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, all were hurt by Kritavarma. He routed the army of the Pandavas. They had to flee in all the directions, unable to face the great Kritavarma. Satyaki had now reached the boundary of the army of Kritavarma. He had crossed another river. First the river called Drona and now Kritavarma. Many of the great heroes accosted him and tried to impede his progress. But they might as well have tried to stop the fire from burning up a pile of dried leaves. Satyaki had reached the elephant army led by Jalasandha. The army was being destroyed at a fast rate. The field was quickly strewn with the carcasses of the immense elephants. It looked as though Bhima had been at work on the army and not Satyaki. Jalasandha approached the chariot of Satyaki. It was not an easy task to fight with Jalasandha. His arrows and javelins had been dispatched with great force. One of the javelins hurt Satyaki in his left arm. Satyaki rained a large number of arrows at Jalasandha. Jalasandha threw a sword at Satyaki. It cut his bow and fell on the ground. Satyaki took up another bow. He fixed 3 deadly arrows. They followed each other very quickly. The first two cut the arms of Jalasandha and third his head. Satyaki now proceeded faster than before. Drona came back to harass Satyaki. He had with him several of the brothers of Duryodhana and the king too. They all attacked Satyaki. Duryodhana fought very valiantly. He broke the bows of Satyaki one after another. He hurt him too, but Satyaki was undaunted. He felled the standard of the king. He killed the horses of the king's chariot, and he made Duryodhana flee from the field. Seeing this from a distance, Kritavarma, who had just routed the Pandava army, came to the help of the king. There was again a duel between Kritavarma and Satyaki. The charioteer of Satyaki was hurt and he fainted in his chariot. Satyaki caught hold of the reins and fought with one hand. He hurt the horses and the charioteer of Kritavarma. He shot terrible arrows at him. They pierced the armor of Kritavarma and he fainted in his chariot, afflicted by the arrows of Satyaki. Drona came to challenge Satyaki. They fought for some time. Satyaki hurt the charioteer of Drona too. He saw the Acharya taking the reins in his hand. Satyaki hurt the horses now. Unable to bear the pain, the horses bolted carrying Drona in the chariot. They careered on the entire field. Drona gave up his fight with Satyaki and went back to guard the Vyuha from further attack from the Pandavas. Satyaki had gone further into the army of the Kauravas. No one was able to stand the sight of this terrible man who was coursing through their ranks like a river in full flood. It was not possible to look at his glowing form. He was like the sun at midday. He hurt the eyes of all who dared to look at him. He was in no way inferior to Arjuna. So thought the warriors on either side. There came to him Sudarshana, a very good archer and fighter. He was well known for his ability to handle all the weapons. He fought a duel with Satyaki, but Satyaki was too good a fighter. He killed Sudarshana. This impossible feat made the enemy host fear him more than they feared Bhima or his son. In a short time, Satyaki had defeated Drona, Kritavarma and Duryodhana. He had killed Jalasandha and Sudarshana. He had made Drona run away from the battlefield and also his cousin Kritavarma. As for the army which he had destroyed, there was no accounting for the many deaths. Satyaki had slaughtered the armies of the Mlichas of Kashi, the Nishadhas, Tankanas, Kalingas, Magadhas, Kekeyas, Kambhojas, Yavanas and Vasatis. He was going fast towards the spot where Arjuna was fighting with the guardians of Jayadratha. With his snowy white horse galloping through the ranks, he looked like Arjuna. The Yavanas tried to stop his progress, but he passed them soon. He was met again by Duryodhana and his brothers. They had with them a huge army. Satyaki was proving to be a holy terror. He had to be stopped. Satyaki shouted to his charioteer, "Look on this immense army of these men. It is coming with the intention of swallowing us. I will fight so wonderfully that my Guru will be proud of me. I will today repay the debt of love I owe to the Pandavas. I will show Duryodhana that there is no such thing as victory as far as he is concerned. I will make the earth drink the blood of these men who have become too lusty with their unrighteousness. I will prove to them that I am indeed the cousin of Krishna and the pupil of Arjuna. You just wait and see how this army is going to suffer." The fight was as he had predicted. The entire army was routed. The king had his charioteer killed, and the terrified horses bore him away from the field as in the case of Drona. It was just a matter of moments before the way was clear once again for Satyaki. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 19 of Drona Parva. Yudhishthira hears the Panchajanya. The Kauravas were furious. They had to stop Satyaki. It looked as though he was even better than Arjuna. He had destroyed a larger portion of the army than Arjuna had. Duryodhana and Dushasana sent a team of fighters who were skilled in warfare with stones. They threw so many stones at him, but Satyaki could stop all the stones and break them with his arrows. He killed all of the fighters with his arrows. There was a great shouting and screaming from them as the men fell down dead. The elephants and horses which had been brought by the other warriors were being killed in large numbers. Drona heard the noise. He spoke to his charioteer. Satyaki is today more terrible than Arjuna. I cannot fight with him at all. He has gone past me and Kritavarma. He is now harassing the army of Duryodhana. Take me to him. I will have to fight him again, though I have already fought innumerable duels with him today. The charioteer said, looking at the dead forms on the ground and the devastation all over, what you say is right. It seems Satyaki is more powerful than Arjuna. But, my lord, he has gone too far. You will have to be here to guard the army from the onslaught of the Pandava army. I think it will be better if you stay here. Even as he was saying this, the army of the king, or rather what was left of it, was led by Dushasana, who was coming straight to the presence of Drona. Drona said, what is this, young prince? Why have you come here now? Having left the king and Jayadratha, why did you come to me now? You are the Yuvaraja. You are the favorite brother of the king. In the courts of Hastinapura, you spoke such brave words. Now I find you here. I see that you cannot stand and fight against Satyaki, who is just one against all of you. You send 1,000 arrows at him and he is not killed. You then tried to stone him to death. Still he is not killed. Where is your pride and your arrogance and your self-respect? Are you not ashamed of your cowardice? Why do you always depend on someone else to do your fighting for you? Why not fight yourself for a change? If the leader is frightened and runs away, how can he expect the army to be brave? You are setting a bad example to all the others. Today, looking at this warrior who is burning up your army, you are frightened and you run away. How are you going to face Arjuna and the great Bhima? Dushasana, do not think that this is the place where the game of dice was played and the hall where the queen of the noble Pandavas was dragged to the court and insulted by you. You are, to a large extent, responsible for the growth of hatred in the mind of Duryodhana for the Pandavas. You cannot recognize the dice which have changed their forms and become arrows which are bent on destroying you. You would talk so proudly of the many things you would do to the Pandavas when the war came. Let me see you do it. You will soon meet the Pandavas in fight. The very fact that you fled away from the battlefield shows that it will not be very long before Yudhishthira is installed as the monarch. Or else, if you want to leave, go to your brother and confer with him. Return their kingdom to the Pandavas and live in your palace with the women round you. You can tell them how bravely you fought in the war. Do it before Bhima kills you and drinks the blood from your heart. I warn you, you are sure to die. Die bravely. Do not let the world call you a coward. Go back to Satyaki. If you are a man, challenge him and fight with him. You are ruining the confidence of the soldiers. You are supposed to be so brave. If you behave like this, what can your poor army do? Go back and fight. Dushasana had the grace to look ashamed. He spoke nothing. He went and fought with Satyaki. He was quite brave and skilled too, but Satyaki was too good for him. Very soon Dushasana was without his bow and without a chariot. Satyaki could have killed him then, but he did not want to shatter the dream of Bhima. He left Dushasana and went away. Drona had been trying again and again to attack the Pandava army. Drishtadyumna and Bhima were always guarding Yudhishthira. After the departure of Dushasana, Drona tried once again to harass them. Some of the sons of Drupada were killed. Drishtadyumna brushed away his tears and came to avenge their death. there was a duel. During the duel, Drishtadyumna made the great Drona faint in his chariot. Seeing him unconscious and at his mercy, Drishtadyumna left his own chariot and jumped into that of Drona. He took out his sword and tried to cut off the head of Drona. But Drona recovered just in time. Drishtadyumna was disappointed. The duel continued. Drishtadyumna was defeated. Drona went back to the Kaurava army and took up his stand as the guardian of the army. The king came with his brothers and fought with the Pandava host. He was fighting excellently. He accosted Bhima, Drishtadyumna, Nakula, Sahadeva and Bhima with Yudhishthira. He was in very good form. He was not frightened either. Drona came to his aid. It was a fairly long fight. Drona fought with Jayadratha-Chapter, the eldest of the Kekeya brothers. The Kekeya was winning the admiration of the warriors on both the sides by his excellent marksmanship. Drona was very angry with him. He sent the Brahmastra. To the great delight of the Pandava brothers, Jayadratha counteracted it by sending the Brahmastra himself. Drona's anger was now terrible. He hurt the Kekeya with many sharp arrows, and in the end, with a single sharp arrow, he killed Jayadratha. Seeing this, Drishtaketu, the son of Shishupala, rushed on Drona. But after a duel of a high order, he was killed by Drona. The son of the great Jarasandha was the next to be killed by Drona. The next to be killed was Kshatrudharma, the son of Drishtadyumna. It looked as though the entire host of the Pandavas was doomed to be destroyed by Drona. In the midst of all this, Yudhishthira was thinking of only one thing. His eyes were seeking only one thing, Arjuna. He looked in all directions and could not get even a glimpse of the banner of Arjuna. He could not hear the music of the Gandiva. He had sent Satyaki. There was no sign of him either. His worry had become double now. He was upset by the thoughts about the three, Arjuna, Krishna and Satyaki. He thought, I am frightened about the fate that may have overtaken Satyaki. I should not have sent him alone into the vyuha of Drona. I do not know what has happened to him. He was already tired when he set out on this dangerous mission. He had fought too many duels with Drona. I must send someone else to the aid of Satyaki. I will ask Bhima to go. Yudhishthira asked his charioteer to take him to Bhima. He said, Bhima, it is so long since Arjuna went to the front. There is no sign of him anywhere. Bhima smiled and said, My dear brother, it is not right that you should worry about Arjuna of all the people. If you become so weak with fear, what are we to do? Tell me what I should do. Yudhishthira's eyes were full of tears. He said, Arjuna has not come back. In my worry about him, I sent Satyaki. I do not know what has happened to them all. It is quite some time since he went. I do not hear any cheering noise from the front. I can only hear the shouts of the Kauravas. I am not able to think of anything else. I am sure that my brave Arjuna has been killed by the many warriors as Abhimanyu was yesterday. I am sure I have sent Satyaki to his death. When Arjuna is dead, do you think Satyaki will be allowed to live? Yesterday I sent Abhimanyu to his death. Today I have sent Satyaki to his death. I want you, Bhima, to go and find out what is happening there. If you see them alive, give forth your war cry like the roar of a lion, and I will hear it and rest in peace. Listen, can you not hear the noise of the Panchajanya now? I cannot hear the twang of the Gandiva. I am sure that Arjuna is dead. Krishna is fighting now to avenge the death of his beloved friend. I am sure of it. In the name of the respect you have for me as your elder brother, I ask you to go and find out what has happened to them. Bhima smiled at the fears of Yudhishthira. He said, when Krishna and Arjuna enter the army, there can be nothing but victory for them. Satyaki cannot come to harm either. But I will obey your commands. I will go now and find out what is happening. Wait for my war cry. Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Chapter 20 of Drona Parva. Bhima's duel with Drona. Bhima went to Drishtadyumna and said, My brother is worried about Arjuna and Satyaki. I do not think it is wise to leave him and go now. But He insists on my going. I have to go. I will go to the place where Jayadratha is even now, fighting for his end. Drishtadyumna, you have to bear the burden alone now. I hope, I hope you will be able to baffle this Drona. I am afraid for Yudhishthira. Drishtadyumna embraced his dear friend and said, Do not worry, Bhima. I will stake my life and fight for the safety of Yudhishthira. Drona can take him captive only after killing Drishtadyumna, and Drishtadyumna cannot be killed by Drona, since he has been born to kill Drona. Go in peace. I will take care of our army and our king too. Bhima took leave of his brother and set out towards the battlefield. They heard the blare of the Panchajanya once again. Bhima set out with all speed to help his brother and his friend Satyaki. Seeing Bhima set out, Drona set his horses in the direction of the Padma Vyuha and stationed himself at the entrance. The moment he left the Pandava host, Bhima was accosted by a team of warriors. They were all the brothers of Duryodhana, with Dushasana in the lead. Bhima was exhilarated at the sight of so many of the brothers of the king. He laughed at them, and his war cry rose up as he began to fight with them. Dushasana hurled a deadly javelin at Bhima, hoping that he would be killed by it. It was broken by Bhima when it was halfway through. Bhima now set about killing them one by one. 7 of them were killed, bringing the total up to 31. The rest of them surrounded him completely and began to harass him. Bhima was enjoying himself thoroughly. Ever since the morning, he had been tied to the front of the army. This was not to his liking. Now, he had been allowed to come into the heart of the army, and the first fight was with the brothers of the hated Duryodhana. Bhima blessed Yudhishthira for having sent him along. He killed 3 more. The total came up to 34. The rest of them ran away from his presence. Bhima had now to tackle Drona if he wanted to enter the Vyuha. Drona attacked the powerful Bhima with his arrows. He thought to himself that Bhima too would pay his respects to him as Arjuna and Satyaki had done. He said, Bhima, you cannot enter this Vyuha without my permission nor without defeating me. Your brother Arjuna was afraid to fight with me. He paid his respects to me and ran away from me without fighting with me and defeating me. He managed to get past me by wangling permission from thee. I will not allow you inside this Vyuha. Bhima laughed at him and said, Listen to me. There is no one in this world or in the heavens who can defeat my brother. Arjuna asked for your permission not because he was afraid of you. He paid respect to you because he still thinks of you as his guru, as one who deserves respect. But remember, I am Bhima and not Arjuna. There was a time when I had immense respect for you. You were once a person who could demand respect from us. You were like a father to us. You were our well-wisher, our Acharya who meant so much to us. We were all thinking of you with so much respect and affection. But now, all that respect is gone. You are the well-wisher of Duryodhana and you are our enemy. The moment you promised to Duryodhana that you would capture my brother and give him up as a captive so that there may be another game of dice played, my respect for you as my guru died in a flash. You saw the game played once and yet you are willing to let it be played again. I am not your pupil anymore, nor are you my guru. You have joined the enemies. You are the well-wisher, as I said before, of Duryodhana. You have announced yourself to be an enemy. You will get the treatment due to an enemy. I am not Arjuna who is too fond of things of the long ago. I am Bhima, the enemy of the sons of Dhritarashtra and all those who fight for them. Bhima's eyes were like live coals. He was mad with fury against the man who had dared to expect respect from him. Bhima jumped down from his chariot and ran towards Drona with his mace uplifted. Drona jumped out of his chariot just in time to save his life. The chariot and the charioteer were crushed beyond all recognition. The horses were dead too. Bhima, leaving the defenseless Drona behind, rushed towards the spot where Arjuna was fighting. The path had been made easy for Bhima by Satyaki. Bhima went forward, cutting his way through the enemy ranks. The elephant army came in for its share of destruction. Like the sun emerging from black clouds, Bhima came out of that huge army of elephants. Here Drona came in another chariot and challenged Bhima. Bhima had no more patience with Drona. He jumped from his chariot and dragged the chariot of Drona hither and thither. Drona was thrown off to the ground. He mounted another chariot and went away from Bhima to the outskirts of the Vyuha. Bhima wiped his hands and with a smile got into his chariot. He went as fast as the wind towards the end of the Vyuha. No one dared to come near him and challenge him. He hurled a terrible mace at the enemy host, and everyone fled at the sight of Bhima. Bhima followed the path that had been cleared by Satyaki. He had come to the end. There he saw Satyaki fighting. Bhima hurried past him and went further to get a glimpse of Arjuna. He went on. Suddenly he saw Arjuna. It was Arjuna. There then came a cry of triumph from the throat of Bhima, which was like the roar of a monsoon cloud. It was heard all over the field. It resounded in all the four quarters. Bhima had given the signal which Yudhishthira had asked him to give. His mind would have no more worries now. Bhima shouted with joy. On hearing his war cry, Arjuna and Krishna were thrilled. They shouted out in return. They were eager to have a look at the brave Bhima who had come so far into the field. Yudhishthira heard all the three voices, first the roar of Bhima and then that of Arjuna and Krishna. He was happy. He was so happy. He cried with relief. He told himself, Arjuna is alive. Bhima, the dearest of all my brothers, has always pleased me, and today he has pleased me as he has never done before. Satyaki is alive, and Arjuna with Krishna is alive. There is no one so fortunate as I am. Bhima's war cry proved to the Kauravas that the Pandavas were coming to the help of Arjuna. It was necessary to do something to prevent the help from reaching Arjuna. Satyaki had come up and now Bhima. Arjuna was there already. This trio led by Krishna would be formidable indeed. Radeya came to challenge Bhima. Bhima's cry of challenge was irritating him beyond measure. Radeya began the attack with a number of sharp arrows. Laughingly, Bhima waved them aside with his own. He covered Radeya with a cloak of arrows. People were amazed at the sight. They had not seen the dexterity of Bhima with the bow so far. He was famed for his attack with a mace and for his wrestling. This was something wonderful. He cut the bow of Radeya. Radeya took up another bow and continued the fight. He was smiling all the while, like an indulgent father at the cleverness of his child. They presented a good contrast. Radeya was cool and his method had so much polish. Bhima's shots did not have the finish, that excellent finish for which Radeya was famous. Bhima showed his anger too. Radeya was unruffled. He looked just like Arjuna as he stood there with a taunting smile on his lips. The smile infuriated Bhima. Bhima wounded him with his arrows. A frown of annoyance passed across the face of Radeya, but he did not lose his poise. Bhima cut the string of the second bow of Radeya. His horses and his charioteer were wounded too, and Radeya jumped into the chariot of his son Vrishasena. Bhima was very pleased with himself for having defeated Radeya. He shouted again since he was now free to go to Arjuna. Radeya came back. He was almost gentle in his attack. Bhima thought that he was not so good a fighter as he was reputed to be. But Radeya was gentle because his heart was not in the fight. He remembered that Bhima was his brother and this was his first duel with him. He had fought with Arjuna, but Arjuna was different. Radhaya's heart was full of affection for this wild and hearty brother of his. He wished that he were able to jump down from his chariot and embrace Bhima and say, "Let us not fight. We are brothers. I am also the son of Kunti. Come, let us go to our brother Yudhishthira." Poor Radheya knew that it was just a dream of the heart. These feelings of love made him soft in his fight with Bhima. The fight became more impassioned. Radheya had no time to continue his reverie. He had to protect himself from this powerful Bhima. Again Radheya lost his chariot and Duryodhana sent Dushala to Radheya with a chariot. Radheya got into the chariot and began to fight. Bhima cut the head of Dushala. Radheya was beginning to get worried about Bhima. Duryodhana was watching the havoc caused in his army. He rushed to Drona, who was stationed at the opening of the Vyuha. His eyes were wild with desperate fear and anger against the Acharya. He said, "My lord, you had promised to us that you would not let anyone get past you. Now 3 of them have come to the very edge of your Vyuha. Arjuna, Satyaki and Bhima have destroyed a very large portion of the army. The 3 of them are going to attack Jayadratha. They are harassing all the heroes who have assembled to protect Jayadratha. How could they get past you? It is incredible. I can more easily believe that the ocean has dried up. How did it happen, my lord? How could it happen?" Drona had had enough and more of this nagging. He had done his best, but the king was not pleased with the selfless devotion of his men. He was always finding fault with him. Drona said, "What has been done cannot be undone. Think of the next important thing to do." Duryodhana said, "Jayadratha has got to be saved. Please make the proper arrangements. I am beginning to lose hope." Drona was disgusted. He had done so much for the king, and here he was scolding him for allowing these 3 into the Vyuha. His arrogance was intolerable. Gratitude was a feeling which was a stranger to the heart of Duryodhana. Drona had been busy since morning guarding the Vyuha. Surely he could not help it if 3 people were able to get past him. He was keeping the entire army of the Pandavas at bay. They would have rushed at the Kauravas if it had not been for him. He was doing something which was beyond the power of human beings, and yet Duryodhana was dissatisfied. Drona was wild with anger. He said, "You are right. 3 of them have managed to get past me. But remember your own responsibility and take proper steps to guard your precious brother-in-law. You have sworn that not a hair of his head will be touched. I have kept the entire Pandava army in check. You do not seem to notice that. Now, you must do your duty and guard Jayadratha, who is a coward of the worst type. With the help of the boon of Shankara, he was able to defy the Pandavas for a single day. But now he is like a boat which has been abandoned in mid-water. When you and Shakuni played the game of dice, there was no question of winning or losing. There was no thought of that. It was all just winning on your part. But now it is not so easy to win. There is a possibility of losing even for the great Duryodhana, who has sworn to protect Jayadratha. It is evident that the dice which you used against the Pandavas have changed their forms and become cruel arrows which have turned against their owner. They are trying to make reparation for the sins they committed against Yudhishthira. Today, the stake is the life of Jayadratha and the dice is not loaded. There is no Shakuni in the court of God. You will just have to play the game. The result is uncertain. I have tried to do my best. I can do nothing more. You go there and all of you do what you can. You are all great warriors. You are there and Dushasana and Radhe are there. There are so many others. They have all decided to die for you. What more do you want? I have to stay here to prevent the army of the Pandavas from rushing on you all at once. It will not be possible to do anything after that. They are now just 3 against all of you. Go and do your best to save Jayadratha from the wrath of Arjuna. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.